So today we are excited to welcome Nic Barlage. Nic is Chief Executive Officer of Rock Entertainment Group, the umbrella entity of the teams and venues that are a part of Cavaliers Chairman Dan Gilbert's Rock family of companies. It includes the Cavaliers, the Cleveland Monsters, the NBA G League Cleveland Charge, and Cavs Legion of the NBA 2K League, and the operation of Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, Legion Lair Lit by TCP, home of the Cavs Legion, and Cleveland Clinic Courts, the Cavaliers Training and Development Center. Nic found his path to sports in college and started his career with a stint in baseball as the assistant general manager for the Alexandria Beetles of the Northwoods League immediately after graduating from St. John's University. From there, he landed a job as a sales consultant with the NBA's Phoenix Suns. Stints with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Charlotte Bobcats followed before he arrived in Cleveland in 2008 with the Cavs. He returned to the Phoenix Suns in 2014 for 3 seasons, but rejoined the Cavs in 2017 as President of Business Operations and was named COO for Rock Entertainment Group when it was established in 2021. He was named CEO last year in 2022. Nic has a community-focused mindset, and his influence extends across the entire Cleveland community, holding positions on the boards of the Cleveland Sports Commission, American Red Cross, Cleveland Clinic Pediatrics Leadership Council, the local Boys and Girls Club, as well as being a member of CLC's Board of Trustees and a graduate of Leadership Cleveland 2019. Please welcome Nic.
Rachel, thank you. Can you hear me? All right, great. I tell you what, I didn't even know half that stuff you read in the bio, so I'm glad that you put it all out there for everybody. No, I'm half kidding, but well, thank you for the opportunity. I just first say I look at CLC as such an asset and resource for all of Northeast Ohio, and I just think the benefit of being in the network of Cleveland's Leadership Center is one that is so much stronger and vibrant because of people like Rachel and Michael and Marianne and the entire team over at CLC that just does an incredible job to help keep us all connected, but also give us all opportunities to kind of learn from each other and grow. And I just will say that my Leadership Cleveland experience, it gave me such a more, just such a deeper, more understood kind of state of our community, and really helped us to formulate kind of our plan as we went forward relative to social responsibility, relative to how we engage with the community, how we prioritize certain things, and ultimately how we took kind of a different strategy and implementation and activation around, what we were doing. I think a lot of times we were kind of checking the box in certain aspects and maybe writing some checks, and now we've really started to focus more on how we can build programmatic outcomes through not just giving resources, but also giving time and people to the right things. And we think at least the right things here in Cleveland. So thank you long-windedly to CLC for being that kind of guiding light for our community. Look, I'm not great about talking about ourselves a lot, because I think that a lot of our work is meant to be done in the community, kind of locking arms and partnering with so many people that I see on this call and we see around the greater Cleveland community. But just, I'd say just a few highlights from our side, and then would love to open it up for any questions and talk through just more of a dialogue. But we're in this kind of moment in time, I think, from a Rock Entertainment Group perspective, and to speak directly about the Cavaliers and the Monsters and the Charge, and our esports interests and efforts, where we think we're kind of on the front end of a really unique, and I don't want to get too verbose and say golden era, but we feel like there's just a lot of momentum and wind that we have in our sails. And a lot of it's due to the incredible community that surrounds us here in Northeast Ohio, as well as the kind of vision that our chairman, Dan Gilbert, has laid out for us to execute. And so we've got a couple of really big things that we're focused on. I think when you think about just the Cavs, and I'll kind of touch on all of these, when you think about the Cavs in particular, we're right now, after tonight, we'll have, as long as people show up to the game. So if you have tickets, please come. But we'll have sold out 70 consecutive games, which is a great feat for us, especially considering we've really only made the playoffs once in the last 5 years. And that really I attribute to the incredible fans we have here in Northeast Ohio. We're seeing great growth across the entire business. We have our viewership, our TV ratings are up. Obviously our attendance is in a great place. And all the main kind of channels of our business look very strong as we go forward. We have been hit by a little bit of the injury bug on the court, and so we're working on fixing that as we speak. As I see Travis on here from the Cleveland Clinic, we've got incredible medical partners, and so they're helping us kind of right that ship as we speak. But nothing. The good news is, yes, we've got some guys that are going to miss some time, but we have a very deep team, and I think as people probably saw, hopefully at least on Monday night, we have players like Sam Merrill and Craig Porter Jr. that we've kind of built and established through the G League that are going to be great for us to develop and to watch evolve and make an impact now as Darius and Evan and a few others continue to work themselves back into health. That's a little bit on the Cavs side. I think on the the Monster side, for those of you that maybe haven't been to a Monsters game, if you want, let us know. I'd love to host you. The Monsters they've led the AHL now in 2 of the last 3 seasons in attendance. We're actually leading the AHL in attendance this year by almost 700 fans a game. We had our teddy bear toss on last Friday night, which resulted in 16,112 teddy bears being tossed on the ice, which we donate to local charities and for children that are in need during this period of time. And so it's a little microcosm or an anecdote of just how great that has been and how great that business is and how great it's doing. We do a lot of unique promotions. We've got a solar eclipse promotion coming up this year for a game that'll be in later March that just has a ton of excitement around it already, which is kind of a crazy phenomena from our perspective. But around the game being that exciting this early on in the season, but not the solar eclipse. That's a natural phenomena that I will let everyone take their perspectives on. And then the charge, which we moved to Wolstein Center. I see Tony on here. I received a nice note from him the other day. We are very excited about the Cleveland Charge. We are in a place where we had our most successful opening weekend in the history of the franchise. It's been around for 15 or 16 years now, which it speaks to having it in our backyard, having it at a place at the Wolstein Center on CSU's campus that's very connected to the downtown fabric and the downtown footprint of residents here. And so we have a lot of optimism about where that business can grow and go and ultimately some of the work it can do in the community. We, at the end of this past summer, we announced our intentions to move our practice facility down to the riverfront to be kind of first phase of Dan's vision for the Valley with our partners at Bedrock and our partners at the Cleveland Clinic. The Global Peak Performance Center, the Cleveland Clinic's Global Peak Performance Center, we think we're making great progress on. We're very close, I think, and probably by late Q1, early Q2 of 24, we'll either be breaking ground or we'll have some significant news to share on what that would look like and what that will look like. And ultimately, like I said, how that'll be kind of phase 1 for developing those 26 acres that sit kind of adjacent to our arena and also are part of kind of what I call the front door of our city, which is something that we are really focused on how we can kind of reimagine and make sure that the experience as people are arriving into downtown Cleveland is one that is representative of the people and is representative of the world. We like one of our sayings internally we developed through NBA All-Stars. We feel like Cleveland has world-class assets without the world-class ego. And we have some aspects of our city that we just need to pick up and lift up a little bit over a course of time. And we think the riverfront is one of those. We think the riverfront has a great ability for us to be able to kind of reimagine what it is. And if you look at the incredible success that the Wolsteins have created on the east bank of the flats and the regeneration a little bit of the west bank of the flats, we partner with the folks at Top Notch Management to put on Tennis in the Land. This is our first year in doing a lot of the commercial operations of that entity. And so we spent a lot of time on the west bank of the flats this summer. It's incredible to see the momentum on both sides. And so we think we can carry that down and extend that around to our riverfront property that we have that's just adjacent to Tower City and adjacent to the arena. So we have a lot that we are aspiring for. We're also, and this is public knowledge, you've seen it, but we're one of the finalists to help CSU redevelop their potential arena which is something we've got a lot of interest in and something we're very focused on because we think it can be a great place for the Charge to be for a long period of time. And we think CSU men's and women's basketball deserve a home that will fit their needs as a basketball facility. And then there's also in our conversations with our partners at Oakview Group and Geis, as well as Live Nation, we think there's a great way to light that kind of eastern side of downtown up with concerts and shows that would fit in that type of facility. So we try to keep our hands in a lot of things. I think thematically, the biggest thing for us is ultimately what will create greater outcomes for our city at the end of the day, for our region, for our county, for Northeast Ohio. And we think every one of the projects that we're involved in has that strategic ability to create an impact that's way more, as Dan would say, like we should do nothing anymore for profit. We need to do things that are for more than profit. And so for us, we think in each of those opportunities, as unique as they all are and as distinct as they all are, they provide a platform for us to just continue to create momentum and create change across our city. And so that's really what we try to stay focused on. And we use sport in a way that kind of blends all of these things, because we think that, and we don't think we know that, look, the Cavs, the Monsters, the Charge, they're community assets at the end of the day. While we're in our positions, while Dan is the chairman, while I'm afforded the opportunity to run the business, we're stewards of those assets. And so we have to make sure that we use that stewardship in a way that it creates better outcomes once again, and a positive impact for our community. So I think I got the 10 minutes filled that Rachel wanted me to fill with all of that. There's a few other things that I'll save, but would love to open it up for more of a conversation, because I'd like to hear other people talk other than myself. So,
Nic, thank you for sharing just such the broad scope of all of the work that you all are doing. You mentioned a lot around kind of being out in the community and supporting the community. So how do you determine the community engagement priorities for the organization, and what are some of your current priorities?
Yeah, it's a great question. One is, I think we've got just great brothers and sisters at the Rocket Community Fund, which is Rocket Mortgage's philanthropic arm, as well as the Gilbert Family Foundation. And so we have a chance to really bounce a lot of things off of each other over time. And what we've learned in some of that is we had to do a better job of assessing what the community's needs were. We thought that if, initially we thought, well, let's do court refurbishments and let's build STEM labs. And those things are fantastic, by the way. We're going to keep doing those things. But those were really somewhat self-serving to us, and our communities needed them, and so they were really important for us to do. And there's something like I said, we're going to continue to do. But what we try to do is be a little bit more prescriptive, and a couple of things I would point to, and try to be a little bit more prescriptive, but also programmatic. It's one thing to rehab a basketball court, but it's another thing to host a series of youth clinics on that court to really ultimately engage with the community and bring the youth in and maybe give them a chance that they wouldn't normally have, that a kid that's grown up in Rocky River may have, or a kid that's grown up in Avon may have, or a kid that's grown up in Gates Mills. And so we've tried to, like I said, build more of a programmatic backbone on things. But then some things are just very cute. The mayor came to me 2 years ago and just said, look, gun violence is a very bad thing in the inner city for us right now. We're struggling with it. Can you help us? And so what we ultimately put together was a Hoops After Dark program that targeted males aged 18 to 24, because that's where they were seeing a lot of the cohort was having issues and trying to, ultimately keep them off the streets, but then keep them more focused on positive behaviors. And so this will be year 3 of that program. It's grown every single year. And we also wrap around career readiness and educational workshops to try to make sure that we're providing, we have job fairs, but we're trying to provide more of, like, once again, using sport as a conduit to then ultimately create and pipe opportunities to people. This summer, we aspire to open up a female league as well. So there'll be a men's and a women's league, because we think that inclusivity is also very important. And that all started off of a conversation, of what a need might be or need might look like in our community. We also, to give you kind of an idea of the scatter plot of the spectrum of it, we also just invested at Centro Villa and to be a part of the mixed use facility over there in that district, because we think it's really important. And the Hispanic population is growing in this community. And so we have to do a better job of being inclusive of all aspects of our community. And so that part is something we're very excited about, building programming around the naming rights of what we invested in the mixed use facility over at Central Villa. And then a couple other things. This will be the 5th or 6th year we've hosted an event called Taste of Black Cleveland, which is really an opportunity for us to showcase the great restaurateurs of our city, which, by the way, when we started this 5 or 6 years ago, I had no idea half of these restaurants existed. Shame on me, I guess. But, there's such an incredible culinary scene in Cleveland, and specifically within the Black community. And so it's very important for us to kind of, raise up those entrepreneurs and put them on a platform that they deserve, quite frankly. And so there's a lot of other work we do. I'm just highlighting a few that just give you kind of the scatter plot of what we try to get involved in. But the biggest thing for us is it has to be acute to the needs of our community. And there has to be the opportunity for us to extend the programmatic backbone off the platform so that it creates a pathway to greater outcomes or success. And then it ultimately has to be something that ties within kind of our morals and values as a company. And so I think if those three things happen, we tend to show up, and we tend to show up in as big of a way as we possibly can.
And through that community work, to what extent are you partnering with the Guardians or the Browns?
Yeah, so we're one of the first teams coming off of the George Floyd, the incredibly horrible incidents of that surrounding the George Floyd murder. Back 3 or 4 years ago, we formed the CL3, which is a 3-team alliance where our president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, the president of the Guardians, Chris Antonetti, the GM of the Browns, Andrew Berry, and our coaches as well. At the time it was Terry Francona, JB for us, and Kevin Stefanski for the Browns. And so now we'll continue to extend this with the Guardians managerial transition, but where we really focus on bringing all the teams together to create an opportunity for us to educate, but also have awareness around what's going on. Example I'll use, we partnered with Noble, which is the National Association of Black Law Enforcement, to hold community sessions where we bring in kids that are under the age of 18 to literally spend time with police officers, just to educate them around, not every police officer, they're very well intentioned. They have a lot of opportunities, we think, to bridge that gap, especially within the city of Cleveland. And so that's once again one example of something that's come from the CL3, but there's many other examples. We led an opportunity for us to do a dedication actually over at the American Cancer Society this last fall, where we were highlighting the 1967 summit, which we brought all the teams together to really highlight that summit, led by Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali, and Lou Alcindor at the time, and a few others, that we wanted to once again kind of create and shine a light onto the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of what we're trying to build upon within the city. And now we're going to host an annual summit every year where we literally talk about and highlight and work to grow, make a difference around these DE&I efforts. And so there's a few examples of things we've partnered with them on, but we think we're stronger together. And we think that, our partnership and collaboration can ultimately be something that lifts our city up and can give examples and provide, once again, platforms for youth to engage, but also people of all walks of life at the end of the day. And we think that that's very important. We have a lot of synergies when it comes to how we think that work continues to converge together for all three of the teams.
I think an area that not many people really know about is esports. Can you talk more about the esports team and what that world looks like?
I can try. I don't play. I'm just kidding. I actually just got off a call with our esports team in California, 100 Thieves, which is one of the bigger esports teams you'll see in the country and in the world. I think esports, although I don't play it, and I'm sure maybe some of you do on the call, I don't play it anymore. It's got this ability. It's incredibly sticky. And it really resonates very well with with consumers under the age of 25, under the age of 30, give or take. But I'll give you just a couple of stats. One, the subscribership. So basically the amount of people that purchase 2K has grown 60% over the last 3 years. Some of this is induced by the pandemic. I'm not going to lie. There's no doubt we've seen kind of this exponential growth in the sport. But the amount of streaming and the amount of content that flows through these games, it would blow your mind. And once again, the stickiness that you have as brands that can engage with this very young consumer-based audience, it's real. You know, you just saw, I think Microsoft just closed their acquisition of Activision, which I think was for $65 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And so you're seeing the value proposition of esports continue to be validated. I will say we have, as I mentioned, we have a team, 100 Thieves, which is Dan's one of the largest shareholders of, and we do the commercialization of the asset from here in Cleveland, believe it or not. But we just were on a call, and the amount of viewers they have when their players stream it's in the millions. I mean, it's unbelievable. And these personas and these players ultimately, I think the great part about esports is all you really need, the barrier of entry is so low. You know, when you think about some sports, the barrier of entry can be pretty high. We have a hockey team, and I'll just say, for kids to play hockey, the barrier of entry is pretty high. For kids to engage with esports or ultimately play esports, the barrier of entry is very, very, very low at the end of the day. And so what you see is this, it kind of can amoeba into so many different forums and so many different areas of our lives. And then I think the other thing too is we've noticed this just with our practice facility over in Battery Park. The desire to engage with it at even the college level, we had a relationship with Kent State, and we also have a relationship with CSU where we host their practices over at our facility. It has this I don't want to say weird, but it has this incredible way of being able to get kind of in everybody's lives in very, very easy nature. Once again, I think due to the barrier of entry, but that it has such a saliency to folks because people either grew up playing or their kids are playing. And so it's an interesting dichotomy because that's one side of the ledger. The other side of the ledger is we also have a 60,000 person youth sports academy, which is about getting kids participating in sports as opposed to sitting on the couch playing video games. So we're in this kind of holistically, but I think it's something that ultimately you're going to see continue to grow and continue to expand. And like I said, it's a great opportunity for us.
So my takeaway from that is the hours of time my son is playing video games, that there's hope for this on the other end.
He could get paid. I'm just saying they pay some of these esports athletes. Don't bank on it though, Rachel. Don't bank on it.
So Nic, you mentioned earlier about being a finalist for working with Cleveland State Vikings to redevelop their facility. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
It's a public RFP process, obviously with it being a public university. It's something we're very excited about, something we think there's a lot of potential for. And once again, I think the Wolstein Center has been an incredible facility for a long time. But I think what you see is ultimately, you know, like no different than a lot of other facilities, a need to evolve that. And what we've noticed is there's a huge gap in our market for, call it, a 5,000 seat venue that can support and serve all of CSU's needs from a mixed use perspective, men's and women's basketball, charge games, as well as concerts and shows. And so we think that there's a real market for something that can be lit up 100 to 150 times a year. And when you think about what that does, the economic impact, I mean, I will say what we've learned in our years of running Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is this is the largest source of economic activity in Cuyahoga County. When you think about the amount of people we put through the building and the amount of heads we put in beds and the amount of, things like admissions tax that we generate. And so if you start to create and you have one on one side of downtown and the other on the other side of downtown and Playhouse Square right in the middle, now all of a sudden we have this district of activity that rolls 365 days a year. And we think that that's ultimately what can help us create and sustain the momentum that Sherwin-Williams has helped create by keeping their headquarters here, and KeyBank does, and all the other great people that are in and around downtown. It's our job to give them reasons to stay and extend. their days and their time in the city. And so that's ultimately, in a little bit of a Cliff Note version, why we're so excited about what we think and what we're trying to dream up from a CSU perspective.
Is there any interest or thoughts around bringing a WNBA team back to Cleveland?
Ooh, great question. Great question. We do talk about it. We have talked about it. We have not matured those thoughts beyond just some very kind of high level conversations. I would say never, especially with a guy like Dan. I would say never say never. We are also, and this is out there in public forum, we are working with the local group on the NWSL bid for bringing a women's professional soccer team to Cleveland. We're doing the deposit campaign for Mike Murphy and Nolan Gallagher right now, and they're doing an incredible job of trying to lead a bid here to Cleveland. And so I won't. It's not our asset per se. So I don't want to speak for them, but we are just very bullish on women's sports in general. It's why we were so attracted to the tennis and the land opportunity, which is a WTA 250 event in the flats. But to the core of the question, I would say never say never on the WNBA. We're constantly looking at new and different opportunities, and we think we're very bullish on women's sports over the next 10 years. We just think there's a great degree of growth and kind of leveling of the playing field that will be happening. And with, what we're trying to focus on is with the World Cup coming here in 26, and in shorter term, like what does that type of opportunity generate an interest on a broader level? And so those are things that, we try to kind of we follow, evaluate, and then try to get ahead of as we think about these different opportunities in women's sports or in sports in general.
And similar question when it comes to hockey. So we've had the success of the Monsters here. Have there been conversations around bringing NHL hockey back to Cleveland?
Yeah, not as much. We obviously are partners with Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think so we haven't. And I think a lot of that's out of respect for that partnership, quite frankly, because we think very highly of them. I also think, just if I'm just speaking personally and a little bit subjectively, I think having a fourth professional sports team in Cleveland could dilute a little bit the interests of all of us. I also think when you look at the regionality of this, you have a team in Pittsburgh, you have a team in Buffalo, you have a team in Columbus, you have a team in Detroit. It's a lot of teams in a very tight area and a very tight focus. I think Cleveland's an incredible hockey market. It's one of the largest youth hockey markets in the country, which is ultimately, why we decided to bring the Monsters here. But I think in those kind of scenarios, you have to think about how things complement each other and how things don't compete against each other. And I think we've got a really strong dynamic right now in the hockey space. And I would, like I said, I would get worried about a little bit of a dilution factor and honestly more on a regional basis than I would within the own city. I think we've got incredible fans and they're going to support what they want to support. But when you start to have to think about regional headquarters and companies that may look at partnering with these kind of assets and entities, and you've got so many, like I said, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Columbus, like what's at some point you hit a saturation point that it may not make sense. Not saying that forever, but we have not had any conversations about that, just given, once again, our respect for the Blue Jackets, our relationship there, but also our respect for the Penguins. They were just bought by Fenway Sports Group. We know those guys and gals very well, and we think very highly of how they do business. And so we've kind of stayed out of that space.
Well, Nic, we have time for one more question. As we are wrapping up this year and about to embark on a new year, what are you most excited for 2024?
That's a great question. Look, I think as a community, we're at this kind of nexus or convergence point of, the mayor's administration is been around for a couple of years now. You got County Executive Ronane's administration is coming up on their first year in the job. And I think you also have these private partners, ourselves being one, institutions like the Cleveland Clinic, our brothers and sisters at Bedrock, Sherwin-Williams. You've got all this stuff that's starting to really happen, and you can kind of see this natural inertia and momentum that's been restarted. And if you go back in time to what I'll call the early 2010s in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, we saw the Republican National Convention come here. We were able to bring a championship here for the Monsters and the Cavs. I wasn't here, so I'm taking zero credit for that. I want to be very clear. But we saw all this alternative development that was happening and all this investment that was coming into our city, the renovation of the Westin, convention center. I mean, all this stuff, right, was all kind of starting to happen. And then the pandemic hit. And we always, we don't joke about this, but we say this, between Detroit and Cleveland, when something like the pandemic happens, the rest of the world, it was a horrible event, but the rest of the world may catch a cold. We catch pneumonia from those kind of things. It really sets our cities back more from a spiritual and kind of development end. And so we think now we're at this point in time, like I said, we're on this kind of cusp of this golden era of development, of momentum, of opportunity, and hopefully ultimately of growth for our city and for our region. And that's what we're so excited to be able to continue that work in 2024. No doubt we have a host of things we got to figure out and solve for, and issues that continue to boomerang into our world every single day. I'm not denying any of those things, but I do think you see a spirit of collaboration and of connectivity that you haven't seen in a while. And I think that spirit of collaboration and connectivity will drive us forward in ways where we'll see more shovels in the ground, we'll see more stuff getting done, and you will see more people excited about the potential of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, which ultimately that's something that we're doubling down on, and we can't wait to spend more time figuring out what's next in that process. So.
Well, Nic, thank you so much for joining us today and for your leadership and all that the organization does for the greater Cleveland community. We are so appreciative of all that you have in engaging in the community.